Welcome to the You're Not Crazy podcast, hosted by Jessica Knight, a certified life coach who specializes in healing from narcissistic and emotional abuse. This podcast is intended to help you identify manipulative and abusive behavior, set boundaries with yourself and others, and heal the relationship with yourself so you can learn to love in a healthy way. You can connect with Jessica and find additional resources, content, and coaching at emotionalabusecoach.com.
Before we begin, I just want to make a quick note. At the end of this episode, I spend the last 4 minutes walking through the way people work with me and where to find resources, my links, and my courses. If you are a returning listener or are already a client, you can absolutely skip that part. If you're new or trying to figure out what kind of support you need, it's there for you. It's the last 4 minutes. Thank you so much for being here. Today, Dr. Christine Cocchiola is back. She is a coercive control specialist, therapist, TEDx speaker, author, and someone who's been doing this work since she was 19 years old. She trained with the godfather of coercive control, Dr. Evan Stark. In this conversation, we go really deep into what coercive control actually is, which is not a form of abuse, but the underpinning of all abuse, and why that distinction matters so much, especially in family court. We talk about the emails that land on Saturday afternoon, right when you have the kids. And we talk about the 3 Ps: predict, prepare, protect. The conversation that we have is very practical. It's also very validating, and it'll probably make you feel a little bit less alone in something that's incredibly hard to explain to someone who hasn't lived it. Dr. Christine also just published a children's book called Every Moment of Every Day, which I think is a really important resource, and she touches on that too. The link to that will be in the show notes. I really hope that this is helpful.
Hi, Dr. Christine. Thank you for joining me again. I would love if you could tell us who you are and what you do, all the things you do. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jessica. I'm so grateful to be here, and I love educating on the topic of coercive control. So I'm a coercive control person out there in the field. I actually was trained under the godfather of coercive control, Dr. Evan Stark. He was on my mentoring committee, and I've been doing this work since the age of 19. So I've been a domestic violence, sexual assault, crisis counselor. I volunteer for the same umbrella agency for 35 years, and I teach on the subject, and I'm a therapist, and I didn't know that my partner of 27 years and 11 months was an abuser, because there was only one physical incident, and I'm pretty sure I pushed him back that day. And otherwise, that was in the very beginning of the relationship, and then there was never another physical incident. So I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought that I was the problem, and he would, of course, tell me I was, right? So what I ended up learning is that, some people call this psychological abuse. Psychological abuse is a tactic of coercive control. And so it made me really interested in coercion and control, and I went down the rabbit hole, and here I am.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you do this work, and I've gotten so much out of your work. I'm wondering if you could define coercive control, because I still think we're hearing that there's more laws that are including that language, but obviously you and I know that the family court system doesn't know what to do with that just yet. But I think a general definition may be helpful before we dive in.
Absolutely. It's so well said that the family court system and systems in general are not recognizing coercive control. So it's now codified as a form of domestic abuse in about 10 states now in the United States, which is beautiful. It's wonderful. And the reality is Connecticut has the strongest piece of legislation, at least as far as I know right now, and it's still not being used efficiently. And the reality is coercive control is not a form of domestic abuse. It's the underpinning of abuse. Abuse is always about someone exerting power and control over you. So we have this really amazing piece of legislation that is not really being heard or well known in the court systems, right? Judges understand what domestic violence is, but sadly, and I talk about this in my TEDx, like it's archaic to look through the violent incident model. People don't show up hitting you. And frankly, not every abuser hits, right? A lot of times they're using the psychological tactics. They have good coping skills and they don't get angry and fly off the handle immediately and harm someone physically.
Mm-hmm.
But the psychological tactics are just as bad. So I would say it's the underpinning of all abuse. It's about power and control. It's about one person or groups of people. I even see it as the basis of racism. Like, think about it. Racism is about, I'm better than you. I think I can control you. I can dictate what you have to do. It is a liberty crime. And so abusers show up to relationships and the psychological tactics can feel really good. It doesn't have to feel bad. It can feel loving and love bombing. And they even made love bombing part of the Crown's definition of coercive control in the UK, where coercive control is criminalized. So that's a new piece that's been newly added in 2023. So I see it as the underpinning of abuse. It's about power and control. One person exerting power over another person. It's a liberty crime. Yeah.
You know, you just said the piece about the UK. What's actually really interesting is when I was there last, I think it was about 2 years ago, they had signs in the airport about coercive control and that if you are feeling this, do this. And I remember it was like 6 a.m. and I'm just staring at it like, wow, you know, imagine if that was everywhere. But yeah, it's not yet. Yeah. So I was sharing with you right before we started, I was going through some of my notes from your training on coercive control and working with people that are in coercive control, experiencing coercive control. And you made a point in there about regulation, which I think comes from, or their dysregulation, which comes from Evan Stark. And it had me thinking about all my clients that they're getting these massive emails and they're getting them at very deliberate times and never anything that needs to be said, or they're offloading anxiety. Or I even had one that it was the topic you could tell it's such a loaded topic for this couple. And it's being sent on like Saturday afternoon when that person has the kids. And it just started to get my wheels turning around. They're offloading their dysregulation and their chaos that they're not managing onto this person. Somebody else might see it as this is an email, but the pattern makes it not. And I guess I wanted to ask you, am I seeing that clearly? Or I know there's probably a deeper point that's here too.
Well, I love that you said it was a pattern because this is what we know. Whenever, victims and survivors are even going to court, it's not like you go into court and say, I'm a victim of domestic abuse. And I'm not suggesting people don't do that. But what we know is that victims aren't believed, right? And we know that oftentimes it's going to be diminished or entirely dismissed that you experienced something, unless there was a physically violent incident in the last 6 months or so. I just don't see it sticking.
Unless you have a mark. Right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, but if you can talk about patterns of behavior. So that's coercion. Like this abuser that you're talking about who's sending like these emails on a Saturday afternoon all the time as soon as the children arrive. Well, that's a pattern to instigate harm. Right. And that's how I would look at it. So the idea is to get the victim off kilter, to make them feel dysregulated. It's intimidation. Right.
Yeah.
And so
their mind's not on the present, it's on this other person. And that's what they want, right? They want your attention.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, it's so important that victims and survivors have some safeguards set up, like some guardrails set up for themselves where they have like a folder. And, I used to have my folder and it was called Freedom.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend helped me come up with it. And the idea is that when those emails come in, they're going directly into like some folder where you don't have to look at them. Or if you're using OFW, you don't look. I mean, obviously abusers know when you're looking and they're excited. Yeah. This is the part I think you're maybe alluding to is like, they actually are very excited that you open that email or that you're looking at it. And it makes them happy to know that you are suffering.
In the same way that if they don't read what you said, or if they don't respond to the expenses that are there, I can probably give 15 examples of just things I heard today from various clients of like the various ways that this comes in. I had a client where they would come to an agreement and then the other partner would just then the next day be not in agreement anymore. And then they would get back to agreement and then they'd be out of agreement again the next day. And she was going crazy because she was just like, this just feels like I have to manage his anxiety over this thing that is not mine to manage.
Right. But it's interesting. I feel like now she actually she's describing a pattern of
Right.
behavior.
Right.
And that's vexatious litigation, which is part of coercive control. It's what they do. They vexatiously litigate. So now you probably recall from the training, I call it the 3 Ps, like predict he's not going to cooperate. It's a pattern. He does this all the time. Like, why be blindsided by it? Why not just say, okay, we agreed it's 12 o'clock on Thursday, but tomorrow all's going to break loose now. All hell's going to break loose. It's going to be totally different tomorrow. And predict that that's what's going to happen so that your body is safer, so that you feel more regulated in that challenging circumstance. And here's the deal. Then you go home and you're like, you celebrate, oh, we have an agreement, but you're like, yeah, right. We really have an agreement. No, we don't have an agreement. And you prepare yourself for the onslaught because what's coming next? The second P is like, prepare yourself. Okay, so he agreed today, but what is he going to throw me tomorrow? It's like I always say, like, they're sending steam trains directly at us. And if we don't get off the tracks, we're demolished. But if we can see it coming, and then the most important P is then you protect yourself. Right. Like you actually are like, whatever. I know exactly what's going to happen. Versus this space of wondering, being caught off guard, being dysregulated, being overwhelmed and flooded. And that gets your brain into a place of significant unsafety. What happens when you actually are like predicting it's going to happen? Your brain is safer. You're feeling safer. You're feeling better. Yeah. And so go ahead, change the agreement. I expected it.
Many clients that they're, because of Lisa Fontes, in my final stages of an MSW now because of the expert witness training. But
wonderful.
Which I learned.
We need you.
Yeah,
you need
I learned from you.
Let me know.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure I will. I will need an internship, and I will let you know when that is. Yeah. I've probably been the one in class that's probably the most outspoken. I'm everything I've done has been about coercive control, like in the coursework and policy, whatever it is that we've worked on. Because I'm working in it, so might as well use it. And I got into this like more heated disagreement when because I had your words about prepare. And I've had my own case for so long around and predicting and thinking about it that way. And I have clients that say, oh, my therapist said I'm just in the anxiety. And I'm like, but this isn't anxiety if it's a fact. Anxiety is worrying about something that may or may not be true. And I'm like, and that's fine. But this is more about you actually know, right? It's actually you're gaslighting yourself. If you're like, I'm surprised I got this email. It's like, you're going to get the email, right? So write down the facts of what happened, put it aside, and then you're prepared. But also maybe by that point, you don't have to actually respond immediately because you knew that this was going to happen. It's not a surprise. You're not caught off guard. But I think some of the language, I don't know, the more general language that we hear, we're talked out of the best practices with dealing with it. And it's probably because people don't even know what they're looking at.
Well, and it's why when I said to you, if you're going for an MSW, I only hire people who are protective parents who have lived through the system. Because the reality is there's so many therapists out there doing this work, and they don't understand the consistent, overwhelming state that victims are put into as a result of someone who's oppressing them. And, this is intimate terrorism. There's no way to sugarcoat somebody who's threatening to take away your children, your house, all of your money, your assets, and constantly bringing you back to court. And also maybe also, quote unquote, putting your life at risk. There's just, so I'm living in a dysregulated state. Yeah, I have a lot of anxiety, but now, again, the pivot is, as you know, is now let's strategize this. How do I go from living in a space where someone has power over me and is dictating my life? Yeah, they'll still dictate my life, but now I know what's coming next. And frankly, as you know, Jessica, we know our abusers better than anybody. We know what they're capable of. We know, you and I, before we got on the call, we were talking about a lazy abuser, right? Yeah. It's like we know what'll motivate them and what won't motivate them, right? And so to have a therapist say, I just think it's really problematic when therapists don't understand that the best way to help a client is to, I believe, give them community. Like, let them know they're not alone.
Yeah.
B is radical acceptance. Like accepting that that person is capable of sending a steam train directly towards you to demolish you. Like getting that helps you to actually get aware of your surroundings instead of, again, being caught off guard. But when we have therapists who are saying to people, well, maybe he's not that bad, or maybe you should give him, like all of these, make more concessions. You've been making concessions all along in the relationship. And maybe you need an anti-anxiety medication. No, what I need is safety.
Yeah.
That's what I need.
Yeah. I need to be able to live a day without worrying about my inbox.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
so true.
The kid. Yeah. Yeah. The power over me thing is sticking out to me. I've had a lot of, it's Wednesday night, but but at this point, I feel like I've had maybe it's because the universe knows I have you today, but there's been a lot of clients with the power over, and what I'm noticing is the refusal to try to set some sort of boundary or protection for themselves because of the threat of what will come. And I think two things. I think one, that they know the abuser and they know the situation and they don't want to, there's no point. But at the same time, I think there's probably a little bit of a freeze response going on too, of there's possibility, and they might not be big possibilities, but such as you don't have to respond to that message until Monday when you drop the kids off at school. Is one of them. Another one was about transitions, which is something I want to talk to you a little bit about. But my client, she didn't want, her daughter's having a really, really, really hard time with transitions. My daughter used to struggle really bad with them. And I was offering some of these different ideas within the environment, but it just felt like she was like, nothing is going to work. And so, but I feel like I know from you that it's like how we show up matters so much in those moments. And I'm curious what you think about that when you feel like I'm powerless in this situation, especially when we have little ones, 10 and under, or maybe 12 and under, what we can do. Because I feel like they get the most out of us through how we show up in those places. So I feel like I'm trying to encourage my clients to find the tiny little pieces of places where you can either set the boundaries or be in power. Where can we just turn the knob a little bit rather than, put a bomb on it? Because we can't do that most of the time.
Absolutely. Right. I think it's important for people to understand that there's a trajectory here, that if I continue to show up in a place of subjugation, is what we call it in the clinical world. My Kit Kat's meowing if you hear her.
Oh, no, I can't. Yeah.
You might want to come on my lap. But the abuser intended us to be subjugated. Right. And so we are less powerful. We have less power. And if we continue to show up that way in front of our children, then the abuser will actually be able to use our children to have power over us. Now stick with me, because this is the most heartbreaking thing.
It is. Yeah.
Protective parents are always saying, I'm worried my kid's identifying with the aggressor. I'm worried that my kid's acting like his father, right? We'll just say, right? And the reality is that if your child did not see you show up in a position of personal power under the worst of circumstances, then they learn to have power over you. And that is some of the traits of the abuser. It's not that your child's going to be an abuser. We're not saying that at all. But we have to understand that if I'm a child and my protective parent is showing no ability, no strength with me, no strength in challenging circumstances, even if we're performing, if my protective parent isn't able to do that, then maybe it's easier for me to do what the other person's telling me to do.
Yeah. And act out in some way. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so if my protective parent is not capable of handling these situations, and the really cool thing is that people are like, but I'm scared, or I'm anxious, or you're telling me to what do you want me to do? I say, you fake it till you make it. And here's why. It's very important. If you fake it, your brain actually begins to think you're safer than you are. I'm not suggesting in an unsafe situation you fake being safe, but think about the woman who was stuck in Stockholm, Sweden. What she did what she did, Stockholm Syndrome is actually a misnomer because the guy who created it was actually watching the situation. He was a psychologist, and he said this woman is becoming friends with her hostage, the hostage person, right? The prison guard, the person who was taking them as hostages. And she's becoming friends. And there's something wrong with her. She has Stockholm Syndrome. She's aligning with her aggressor. The reality is she did what every woman does when they're trapped. She collaborated. And she saved everybody's life.
Mm-hmm.
And so she pretended she was safe.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, she began to have power over him. Now, actually, I'm going to reword that. She didn't have power over him. She had personal power.
Right. Yeah. With power within. Yeah.
Power within, which gave her the ability to actually convince him to let them go. And so when we show up in a place with our children where they see us having this personal power, even in the most stressful of circumstances, they look to us and say, oh, maybe mom is actually as strong as dad. And I'm not talking physically strong, as you know. Maybe mom can handle this. And what happens to our brain when we're doing that is actually our brain heals. It's kind of cool. Neuroscience shows us the more you do that, the more your brain will begin to heal from the trauma you've experienced. So it's like almost like, wait, you're telling me I have to act as if I'm okay when I'm not okay? Well, yeah, I actually am. So it's quite remarkable. And then the children actually can begin to heal and come towards us because, as you know, the biggest issue when you were talking about transitions is that the children are going off to the abuser's house. They don't want to go, let's just say. They're afraid. We have to make them go because family court will be in big trouble if we don't, right?
Right.
So do we say, you're going to go and have a great time with daddy? He loves you very much. No, that's BS. No.
Right. Yeah.
What we can say is
you'll be okay.
You know what? This is what we have to do.
Yeah.
So rather than even talk about you being okay, we can say, this is what has to happen, but I'm going to be right here waiting for you when you come home. So we give them something called object permanency, where they get actually it's solidified. We are going to be right there waiting. And then, as you know, we have the kids who are coming home and they're dysregulated and all over the place. How do we just regulate with them? So important. All of these ways that actually heal our brain.
Well, transitions used to be really, really, really bad. Would go on for days and they would start days before she went. But now it's different, but that's due to also other reasons. But say she's 4 or 5, I started to realize my daughter would go once every 3 weeks. And it was like that weekend may be my only weekend to do something, but it became, I need to spend the Saturday I have getting completely regulated, cleaning up on Sunday, so that way when she comes back,
you're ready.
I'm ready. And it took me a little bit to get there, probably because I didn't have some knowledge and over time, because I would be like, I have to get all these things done. And then it turned into no, you don't. You need to be able to withstand and be with the storm. And now the storm is she's also older now. It's 9 now. And have predictable things to be able to be that landing place. I remember it took a while. And obviously, I mean, Dr. C, I know you talk to a lot of people. Transitions are one of the number one topics and that people talk about. But I think that it was probably until a couple of years ago that I really focused on how am I showing up. And in the same way when she leaves, being very predictable when she leaves, following a similar pattern, because I think that created internal safety for her.
Right. The structure does, right? And then how do we handle them when they come home? To your point, if we are exhausted and overwhelmed ourselves, and we just looked at an email from the abuser, we're going to be more easily dysregulated. And what our child actually needs is calm from us, even when they're not calm. Right. And so, that's why in the children's book I just published, Every Moment of Every Day, it's how do you show up when your kids come home? What are the things that you give them choice? What do you want to do, sweetheart? Or maybe they don't even want to talk to you. And you said, she's a little older, so it's a little easier. But then now around 9, 10, 11 is when these abusers lure them in with permissiveness. And so then all of a sudden these kids get confused in a different way. They didn't want to go before, but now, wait a minute, I can play video games till 12 o'clock on a Saturday night, or I have a phone now, or, dad never makes me pick up my clothes, right? So So now the luring in is happening. And then the kid's going to come home and maybe have heard mommy's crazy or, mommy doesn't love you as much. And so then they're so dysregulated. And so now we got to it's almost like strapping yourself in. You're like, okay, like that part of my life is over. She's no longer afraid to go maybe, or, she's not going as often or whatever the situation is for anybody. But then it's like, okay, now what's next? Again, predicting it.
How do you manage when things are so different in the other person's home? Say this is a situation, maybe not 50-50, but like 60-40. And one home is say the protective parent is more regulated. There's routine, there's dinner time and homework time and bedtime routine and whatever, hygiene, no TV during the weekday, whatever that might look like. And say the other parent's home is just kind of what you just said, of kind of more of a free for all, ice cream for dinner at times and, TV whenever and sleep. I don't care. I'm not in this situation, but if I was, I could imagine being very angry all the time, probably because my kid probably would also be taking it out on me. When you have clients with something similar and they're like, I can't control what's going on there, but what do you say?
So I say that we're parenting different children and they're actively being neglected and abused by that other parent, by the predatory parent. And the purpose of doing that is because there's no regard for the well-being of the child. So if they get to watch video games on Saturday night till midnight at the abuser's house, what happens if you stay up with them and you play video games with them till 11 or till 10? What's the compromise you can make that goes toward, again, it's not about giving them what they want, but if they're going to get all that freedom at the other house and you're going to keep your same rules, good luck. Good luck. That kid is going to be lured in so quickly. The fishing line is going to pull them in. If you can acknowledge that you're parenting different kids. And, let's just for a moment, abusers want you to be sad about maybe the values you had in your life that your child wasn't going to, like in Denmark and Sweden, I think kids don't get social media till they're 14 or 15 now. Like maybe you had that, maybe you and that person decided on that together. And then as soon as the divorce happened, everything changed. We expect that. Again, predict that's going to happen. And now how are you going to handle it? And so does that mean maybe you never thought you'd be playing Super Mario Kart till midnight on a Saturday night, but now you are, because at least, and it may not be midnight, it may be 10, maybe that's your compromise, but our rules do change.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I have a 14-year-old who she goes out partying with high schoolers every weekend. She lives with her father. She won't live with her mother. He took custody and her mother picks her up after being high and drunk from the parties.
Yeah.
And her mother is her designated driver.
Oh.
And her mother drops her off 2 houses down the road so that the camera from the abuser's house can't see the child coming home with mom. And that's the only time this mother sees her child. Now, does she ever think at 14 years old, her child will be going off to parties, drinking, and using drugs? No, never. But right now, all she can do is be there for her child.
Yeah.
Be there. And so I always say, I'm not I've never played video games. I'm not a big, but my kids love Minecraft. Can you get engaged in something that they love? Let them catch you playing it on your own. Let them catch you playing it. Like that's like a win for a protective parent,
Yeah.
Instead of seeing it as the abuser.
It sounds like connecting with them,
It's all about connection.
The phone thing, I see that become weaponized so much. And I think it's happening earlier and earlier. The abuser will get them the phone and then they get this access, but it doesn't go both ways, obviously. The protective parent can't access. But I see a lot of the parents that I work with resisting it or wanting to put more control around it. And then it's creating this resentment rather than how can we create some trust, but you can still have boundaries with it. It just, can we find a middle ground with the phone and the child?
Yeah, or get your own phone. Or even I have protective parents, they get the phone first because they predict the abuser's going to be getting the child the phone. They get the phone first. Yeah, I mean, there's just, who thought that your 8-year-old was going to come home from their birthday party at the abuser's house and come home with a cell phone? I mean, you never in a million years could have imagined that. What do you do with that now? Does that mean that they can't use the phone at your house? I have 8-year-olds who are refusing to come home to the protective parent because the permissiveness, every child is going to gravitate towards permissiveness. It doesn't mean it's a troubled child. It just means that's a normal part of development. They want autonomy. They want freedom. So, yeah.
So that's really interesting. I guess I haven't thought about that model of the permissiveness piece of that puzzle or probably a really long time. But when you see a child, say it's a 6, 7, maybe 8, refusing to leave the abusive parent, say at a transition and they're hugging and kissing and loving and all the things, obviously it crushes the other one and the other person's using it, Do you think that internal reaction is because they don't, I think on some level, and I see so the kid doesn't actually feel internally safe with that person all the time, but I think that piece that my brain can't think all the thoughts at once, but the permissiveness piece of the puzzle is the inviting things. They're like, oh, I get to feel good and feel this way when I'm with this person. Maybe it's not the safe good, but it's the, I had candy for dinner good.
Mm-hmm. So certainly, but I think the other piece to this is if I don't hug this person, if I don't show them affection, they're going to reject me. They're going to be angry with me. They're going to treat me like they treat the protective parent. They're going to treat me like my sibling who's the scapegoat. So I'm going to just keep on showing up in a way that is basically doing whatever is necessary to ensure I stay in their good graces.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah. Wow.
That's the manipulation factor that I see. The conditioning of the child is that they begin to realize the best way to behave is to behave really how the abuser wants them to behave. And that's when we see, I call it the 3 eyes. It's they isolate the child, they intimidate. And that intimidation is, well, you do want to give me a hug, or you don't want to give your mother a hug, do you? Right? Intimidation doesn't have to feel necessarily bad, right? A child wants to hug that other parent, even if they don't, in some cases,
or a grandparent or an aunt, uncle, friend, right? But then they take
absolutely. You do want to call her mommy, don't you? Even though it's a stepmother, right? So it's the double bind, right? They have no choice, right? They're caught in this double bind. And so they're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't. So they, of course, whatever it takes to feel the safest in that situation. And that usually means doing what you want me to do. So I'm going to isolate you, intimidate you so I can indoctrinate you. And the more that you are coerced to do that, it's conditioning. Over time, more and more, you're actually going to kind of buy into it a little bit, especially if I'm giving you permissiveness or I'm threatening you very you're scared of me, right? So it can go both ways. But, I have a 14-year-old. When he was 12, he was physically assaulted by his father. His father was arrested, had pressed charges, everything happened. And at 14 years old, he moved in with his father.
Oh my God. Wow. Yeah.
He had been so conditioned that mom made it up, that it wasn't that bad, that his dad didn't really do that, etc. And he had so much freedom. He went to dad's. Yeah, I have a 12 and a 14, a 12. She's almost 14. They were 10 and 12 when they disclosed sexual abuse. Father was convicted and arrested. I posted about this today, but my video actually froze today. I don't know why on Instagram. So you can hear my voice, but you can't see my mouth moving. But the story is that they want to live with their dad now. He was arrested and convicted for sexually abusing them.
Wow. Yeah. I grew up in an abusive home, physically and verbally, emotionally. And I don't know, maybe it's why I do this work today, but I never bought it. I got more abused because I would call them out on the abuse. You know what I mean? So I was the kid that would be like, that's wrong. No. And my daughter has so much of that in her, and I'm so proud of her for, I don't know, getting that. Right? There's so much sadness that would be a whole other podcast for, but when I'm hearing about these kids and internalizing it, that is so sad to me, because I can just imagine how confused they are around what safety actually feels like.
Absolutely.
Does it change the way that they think? Are they holding two truths at once, or does it begin to be one truth?
Well, I think I would like to think that, prior to the age of 25 or 30, that they are holding two truths, right? But I think the older you get and the more indoctrinated you are, the more conditioned you are, and add in, so you talked about your family, you grew up in coercive control, right? But you were a resilient kid. So, and I'm not trying to be condescending, but we're all born with certain traits. And, some of us more hardy than others. And because of that, we're able to withstand this really harmful behavior. We don't get lured in, no matter how much candy somebody gave us, right? Because there's a hardiness there.
Yeah.
And
I
that
probably
doesn't
would have said, fuck your candy. Honestly, just
okay.
use an example, when I was a kid, I just was I remember at the beginning of the podcast, you said about the psychological is so much more, can be so much more damaging than physical. I said that at 10 years old. I said, I don't care if you hit me. Yeah. But what you're doing to me is fucking killing me. Yeah.
So high emotional intelligence, right? And just really attuned and resilient. And that doesn't mean that people who are born that are not as resilient are bad. That's not at all what this is about. It's just about a little bit of a hardiness. And so, so that being said, the reality is that some children are just not as hardy. And over time, even the hardiest of kids can be worn down.
Yeah.
And so the question becomes, if you're, a kid who's 24 and over time you've just been programmed and programmed and programmed and programmed, maybe you're hardy, but maybe you lost some of that. Maybe it's kind of like what you really need is attachment to a healthy parent. That's what this all comes down to.
Yeah.
And if that's been broken for you, that shift has happened. It's harder. So the older we get, the more our traits are kind of ingrained. We're always growing and changing. There's no doubt about the fact that people can change. But I think I say that and then I stop myself, because the problem is that victim survivors live in a place that their abusers can change. And these people cannot change.
Yeah.
They cannot change. And so if we give hope to someone who's thinking, oh, if we just went to therapy again together, if we just did this together, or maybe now that he stopped drinking, no. And so, can some people change? Yes. But these people, these abusers, have had these traits for an extended period of time, and the chances of that changing are nil.
Yeah. Yeah. When you said the thing about the healthy attachment to a parent, and the last podcast we did, you said the research shows that the attachment to one healthy parent, is what they need. And I think that a lot of times people roll their eyes at that, especially when they're experiencing this, which would make so much sense. And I mean, it does make so much sense because we're scared. Can you explain that, why that matters so much? Yeah.
Sure. So what we know is attachment is very much related to authenticity. And when you grow up in an abusive home, and one of the things that you did is you decided, I'm going to be myself here in this home.
I know. Whether I'm going to kill me at this point,
I'm going to fight back. I'm going to just be myself. I don't care if you don't like me. I don't care how you treat me. I'm going to be me. So again, that resiliency, you had an adaptability there that's very special, right? Not everybody has it. And that, again, it doesn't mean you're bad if you don't have it.
Well, for what it's worth, when I was a kid, I hated it because I felt every single thing. I was watching myself get abused and I was not letting myself be gaslit, which of course I didn't know that word 20 something more than that years ago, but I hated it then. I appreciate it now.
Right.
But that's probably only within the last, I don't know, 5-6 years of healing from all those things.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a blessing or a curse, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but even the most attuned people can miss this because these abusers can be very insidious. So if they're physically violent, it changes it a little bit. It makes it a little easier.
Yeah.
Right. But if they're not, and many of the people that I think both of us are working with, a lot of the times the abuser's never been physically violent. And so the kids don't see it. There's no visible signs. Nobody at school sees it. The pediatrician doesn't see it. Nobody thinks there's any kind of abuse. But what we do know is that attachment, secure attachment, helps people to have healthier relationship dynamics. And really the only way for me to, and it's not black and white. There's some people who don't have secure attachment and end up being just fine. But overall, attachment is very much related to authenticity. And authenticity is about being able to be myself.
Yeah.
My house, being able. So I look at you, somebody who, again, it was challenging and you hated this part of it, but you knew at your core that what was going on was wrong. And you were not going to like play into it. I don't know if you have siblings, but maybe you had a sibling or two who did play into it, who did.
You're much younger. That's yeah.
Okay. So maybe more vulnerable. And the reality is because of your circumstances, you've been able to heal and grow in different ways. So the problem with children growing up in these family systems is they're always performing for the abuser.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not authentic. They can't be authentic. And then they're told when they go home, your mother doesn't love you, or she thinks your brother's smarter than you, or make sure that, you pick up your room, because if you don't, your mother's going to yell at you all the time, right? So the betrayal trauma that I'm having from an abuser, actually that same betrayal trauma that abuser's projecting onto the protected parent. So the child is living in a space of, I would call it untethered. They don't know who to latch on to.
That's so, it like breaks my heart into a million pieces, honestly. It's so sad because you can see it in them too, that they just feel like, I don't know what to trust or where to rest.
Which is why it's our job to, as much as possible, fortify attachment, help them to regulate, give them opportunities to somatically heal in their life. This is a story about a little boy and a little girl. See the little boy and his
Every
mommy?
moment of every day. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, but the little girl too, I have a little girl of color because I wanted to make sure that any mother who reads this, no matter what race, socioeconomic class, whatever the demographics are, that they felt like they were being seen in the book and that the children felt like they were being seen. Because that's like coming home and I'm all dysregulated and now you're mad at me because I'm dysregulated. That doesn't fortify attachment.
Right.
We can deal with the behaviors later. Let's just work on right now connecting.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess, is there so say there's a situation like that and we'll stay with the young kids, but it's just pure hell for the protective parent all the time. Now, they're not going to stop wanting to see their kid or anything, but it's just like they just get this dysregulated shit show. What do you typically recommend that either the way they think about it or what they do in order to kind of help them see what's happening? And because and maybe this is the lens I would probably view it in, is like, if I understand what's happening for my daughter, then I can get myself to a place of, this is what I need to do to hold that space for her.
I love that. That's great. Yeah. I mean, I just suggest we all look through the coercive control lens. Whatever the adult victim has experienced, the child is experiencing, except they're experiencing it on a developing brain. And every time they go to that abuser's house, they know they have to perform. They can't be authentic. Their brain is getting broken. They're actually being told grandma doesn't love them, or their sibling thinks they're smarter than them, whatever it is. It's always competition, creating a space of betrayal. And then they come back to us, to our home, and we're dysregulated because we're trauma victims. We got to pull ourselves together, sadly. And that's a challenge. This is why I always say, like, certainly, again, community and radical acceptance and reducing our shame. We have to, we didn't do this. If we were in a relationship with a person like us, the relationship would be good.
Yeah.
Right. And so forgiving yourself, you don't have to carry that shame, but then also, like, now level up. My kid is a victim of abuse. It's actively occurring. If they had a broken leg, how would I be treating them this weekend? They have a broken brain.
Yeah. I'm not sure how to word my question. It's like I had it and I lost it. So I'll just cut this part out of the podcast. But yeah, I was on the loyalty bind, but it went out of my head. What do you think that like the stable parent, the protective parent needs to, I guess, like understand about what their kid is going through? Is it, I like the lens that you just said about like, they need to kind of like, it's helpful to see like what I went through, my kid is now going through. and you also point on the shame part, because that's where this is going to go. It's going to feel like, oh my God, like I put my kid in this position. Mm-hmm. But I know there's an empowering side to this too, of what the possibility is for the protective parent to be that example for them.
Well, the only person who can heal that child, the only person is the protective parent.
Yeah.
That connection, that attachment. Connection is different than attachment. Fortifying attachment as much as possible, allowing a child to be authentically themselves as much as possible in our presence, ensuring they have protective parts. They have, whether it's grandma and grandpa, whether it's, working at the local animal shelter, whether it's they play gymnastics, who are their people that feed them well, because abusers will isolate and certainly intimidate. So how are you constantly working on this, creating all of these? Yeah. It's a different kind of parenting.
Yeah,
it is. And if we don't do it, then we're behind the 8 ball. That steam train is coming right at us. That's the reality.
The question that ran away I got it back. So, and I'm sure you have to go soon. We could this be the last thing we can touch on, but how honest do you think protective parents can be with kids that are younger? At the beginning of the podcast, you sort of gave the example of like, I'll be home when you get back. This is what it'll be like. It reminded me of how my daughter wants to see that I am home when she FaceTimes. Like, it's very important to her that I'm in this. And I think it's a regulating thing for her of like, oh, you are in the space I want to see. I've been more honest as time has gone on. I don't do everything is going to be perfectly fine and great, because then she'll say, no, it's not, but no, I'm not to use my kid as the example, but like I hear so many people sometimes not saying anything, which I think the kid just feels like silenced at times. And then there's probably another, we know everything is going to get weaponized as well. So how honest can you be with like little kids?
I think it's important to what you're talking about, what you alluded to about you being in the home is called object permanency. And so she needs to like kind of see you in the place where she's used to, like you said, where she's happy. Even something as simple as, sweetheart, what shirt do you want mommy to wear when I pick you up? Like something like that, like she can look forward to that shirt, right? So, but I think being honest, it's just really important we don't disparage the abuser. But here's the problem. People do the opposite. They elevate the abuser.
Yeah.
Stop. There's no reason to say daddy loves you so much. There's no reason to say you're going to have a great time. There's no reason that's gaslighting our children. I call it disintegrated intuition, because gaslighting has malicious intent. We actually are just trying to protect them, but we're disintegrating. Their intuition is literally getting disintegrated because they know they're not going to have a good time, or they know they don't want to go, and we're telling them go and have a good time. So like, you're going to have a great time. So just keep things very simple, right? It's like, it's just, I'll be right here waiting for you. I can't wait to see you on Sunday. Right? Let's pick out the shirt. I'll pick you up. On Sunday. Let's go to mommy's drawer and pick out that shirt. Creating as much clarity around like that you're there for them without disparaging the abuser. Right? Now, as they age, can we say, I get that this is hard, but I'm right here. Right? Dad didn't show up 3 times for a visit on Saturday, let's just say. And, you're like, oh man, it's so bad. I'm so sorry dad didn't show up. He must have been working late again. No. You can say something like, wow, this is the 3rd time. I bet that's upsetting.
Yeah.
No, mommy, it's not upsetting at all. I'm actually really happy. Okay. Well, thank you for telling me the truth. Or, yes, mommy, I can't believe daddy didn't show up and he keeps not showing up. He must not love me. Well, not showing up doesn't mean he doesn't love you. But see how I didn't say he doesn't love you, right?
You just said it doesn't mean. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I always say the more examples we can bring from our outside life, like, Jessica, maybe you have a boss at work who's a bully.
Yeah, yeah.
You can make up a story about a guy at work who's a bully or a woman at work who bullies you. And then you begin to talk about what bullying is, and you begin to talk about gaslighting and manipulation. We can bring in all these outside examples and teach our kids without ever having to teach to disparage the abuser, but they will make the connections, which is what we want.
Yeah. My daughter unfortunately learned that lesson through a situation at school with a friend. And it's, and she started, at 6 and 7, and started to learn people will make things up about me that are not true. Other people are going to believe it. And then she was gaslit, and it went on for a long time. And we had so many conversations about like her internal reality not matching the reality that's out there. And I feel like now, 3 years later, our conversations are so different because I hated that she had to go through all of that.
Yeah.
And it was so hard watching it and being with her. But now it's like we can have those conversations about like, okay, what do you know is true in your heart, rather than what is that person saying is true about you.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. So learning experiences, right?
Yeah. I really love talking to you all the time. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. I'm so glad we got to finally connect. It's been a while. So
I know.
Yeah.
But you mentioned your book, the children's book, a couple of times. I'd love if you could tell us again what it is, and I'll make sure to put the link in the show notes and
Thank you.
People can find you.
Yeah, it's actually for anybody divorcing. It doesn't have to be an abusive situation, but it's really intended for people in abusive situations. So, but anybody divorcing, sometimes kids don't want to go.
Yeah.
They just don't want to go. And sometimes when they come home, they're grumpy. Maybe they didn't sleep good. Maybe, there was a big gathering or whatever. So how do we help them to regulate? So I actually inserted opportunities for somatic healing, for the body to heal in the book. So it basically gives children permission to be grumpy or not happy or sad, and what they can do with those behaviors or those feelings, and it gives protective parents the tools to help the children navigate those feelings. So hopefully people will find it helpful.
Thank you so much. And then what's the name of the book?
It's Every Moment of Every Day.
Every Moment. Okay. And where can people find you?
They can find me on my website, Coercive Control Consulting, and of course on Instagram, Dr. Cocchiola Coercive Control.
And your TED Talk.
Yes, my TED Talk. It is all coercive control. I would love for people to listen to it because there's some misnomers out there. People call coercive control hidden abuse. That's not true. So we need people to understand it's the underpinning of it all. So,
well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
If this episode resonated and you're realizing that what you're dealing with isn't just stress or miscommunication, there are ways to get support that don't minimize what you're experiencing. I'm going to spend the next couple of minutes telling you about my offerings, because at the core of my business is one-on-one coaching. The podcast is something that I do because I do like being able to help a broader audience. But the truth is that the core of my work is really coaching and providing other offerings so that people can begin to heal. At the center of everything I do is one-on-one coaching. That's where I slow things down, listen closely, and help you make sense of what's happening in your specific situation. It's not a template. It's not just based on theories, but it's really focused on your real life. Some people start with a one-time validation call. That is a single focus session where we look at one specific situation or pattern that you're struggling with. And the goal isn't to fix your life or push you into decisions. It's to help you name what's happening, put it into context of reality, help you notice where you are in it, and offer some feedback and tools to how to navigate it. I also offer an intro call. The intro call used to be called the clarity call, and it's a short call where you can share what's going on for you, and I can explain how I work and whether I'm the right fit for your situation. There's no obligation to continue after that. It's simply a way for us to get on the same page before moving forward. For people who need ongoing support, I offer weekly or biweekly coaching. This is especially helpful if you're navigating emotional abuse, trauma bond, high conflict divorce, or custody and co-parenting with a difficult or controlling person. Ongoing work allows us to track patterns over time, stay anchored when things escalate,
and make decisions in a way that protects your nervous system and your long-term stability. All of my coaching options can be found on my websites, emotionalabusecoach.com and highconflictdivorcecoaching.com. Both links are available in the show notes of this episode. In addition to one-on-one coaching, I offer several self-paced courses and programs. They're called Divorcing a Narcissist 101, How to Document for Family Court, the Emotional Abuse Breakthrough Course, Setting Boundaries with a Narcissist, and Unhooked, which is my program and private podcast that walks you through the full cycle of abuse, helps you map it out in your relationship, and shows you how to begin to break free from the trauma bond. I also write on Substack, where I explore topics like trauma bonding, emotional abuse, coercive control, high conflict divorce, and the cluster B dynamics. There's a free option and a paid membership that offers deeper dives, Q&As, and additional resources. Everything that I do and everything that I build is around one core truth and message that you're not crazy, you shouldn't feel crazy, and that even though I can see patterns in what you're experiencing, it doesn't mean that it's normal. It's not healthy. My work is really about helping you understand what's happening and begin to trust yourself again. All of the links that I shared are in my show notes, and I really appreciate you being here.